Welcome to Sports Cards once again. eBay has recently announced that it is partnering with CSG to authenticate any cards sold on their platform for over $750, and that by the middle of the year it will expand to include all cards over $250, raw, graded, everything. Let's look closer at what this might mean for you as a buyer or seller and some of the positives and negatives of this situation. In 2017, eBay started its authentication program, and over the years, it's expanded to include authentication services for handbags, luxury jewelry, watches, and high-value sneakers. And now it will bring trading cards of both the sports and non-sports variety into the mix. So what exactly is this going to look like? Essentially, when a seller sells a card for over the value limit, instead of sending that card directly to the buyer, he or she will instead send it to an authenticator, which for sports cards will be CSG. They will look it over to make sure it's genuine, and then they will send it on to the buyer after that. The idea here, according to eBay, is that essentially as their platform has become so large as a trading card marketplace, they want to be more focused on making sure people are able to use their platform with security and certainty that they are actually getting what it is they are paying for. Fraud and dishonesty pop up in the sports card market unfortunately rather frequently, and this is eBay's effort to make it less likely to happen on their platform. As such, they are making it a requirement and not just an opt-in option or something like that. For the time being, eBay is taking on the additional costs associated with this authentication, but there is no guarantee that it will stay that way long term. In order to meet the logistical demands of this, they are partnering with CSG and their parent company CCG, who is a long-established grading company that has been grading and authenticating trading cards, paper money, comic books, and just about anything else gradable for quite some time. They say the item will be inspected within 2 business days of receipt and is shipped in 3-day delivery after that, the cost of which is covered by eBay. However, with the volume of trading card sales that happen on eBay, it's quite easy to imagine a scenario where those time expectations are not able to realistically be met. And while CSG's backlog for grading sports cards was never as long as PSA or BGS's, and while authenticating a card takes a fraction of the time that doing a full grading process of a card would take, it's hard to imagine how CSG will be able to stick consistently to such a tight timeline when the grading and authentication space for sports cards by and large is well known for being a process that is slow and often delayed. I would suggest that if CSG was able to take on this responsibility with dedicated staff focused on this specifically, then they may have been the best choice for eBay to have made for this partnership. I have made a couple of videos in recent months about CSG and how they seem to be moving more strategically in the sports card grading market space and with more clarity in their steps forward than most other companies are able to muster. In one video, we looked at how, while at the same time they were opening up a sports card grading arm, they were also expanding into the Chinese sports card grading market, where in quite a short period of time, they have really made moves into that market that no other grading company has really been able to make. And since China's sports card market is growing so fast, that is quite a beneficial business move for them. And in another video, we explored how they have been cozying up with fanatics, who are positioned to become the central axis of all things sports cards quite soon. And in that cozying up process, they have been getting financial backing that is extremely strong. Both of these business moves seem to clearly be of strategic benefit to CSG's long-term business outlook. And if any of the major grading companies were positioned to be able to take on this eBay partnership in a way that doesn't disrupt everything else they are doing, I would suggest CSG would be the one who could do that. Actually, thinking about what CSG is doing business-wise right now is quite fascinating, actually, I'd say. Fanatics and eBay are the biggest names in the sports card world, and CSG is right up in both of their business. They're forcing themselves right into the center of the sports card world in every nook and cranny they can find, and they are somehow finding nooks and crannies that are like continental-sized. But moving away from CSG, let's go back to eBay here and think through a few more pluses and minuses. On the plus side, this authentication process will likely create more trust in the marketplace at eBay. If you don't have to worry about being sent fake cards or cards that are different than what you have bought, then that does take away one of the major fears that might prevent some people from buying and selling more high-end cards on that marketplace. On the negative side, however, even if CSG is able to keep up with the fast-paced expectation for 2-day turnaround times for the authentication process, there still will be a delay between the time of purchasing the card and the time of receiving it. In a market like the sports card market, where values of cards can change very quickly, even just based on the exceptional or exceptionally terrible play of a player in one single game, that additional delay could make a big difference in many circumstances. And the possibility of a backlog being created is very real, where that delay could become longer than what is currently expected, which would only make the problem become more significant. Another negative thing to consider is just how many hands that card is going to be going through between the seller and the buyer now. Cards are sensitive things, and even just the lightest little surface scratch or dinged corner can often affect their value in a pretty extreme way. Even without the additional step of authenticating, many buyers and sellers worry about how their cards will fare in the shipping process. But now we're adding additional steps that risk potential damage happening at quite a few different phases. I mean, there still could be a damage-related issue at the shipping level, but now there are also the steps of a third-party individual opening up the package, taking out the cards, inspecting them, repackaging them, hopefully at least as well as they were packaged in the first place, and then resending them out again. That's quite a lot of additional steps in the journey from seller to buyer, and there is risk of damage at every separate step. The negative things being said though, I do see value in what eBay and CSG are trying to do here. I would even suggest that at the first level of rollout, where it only affects cards valued at $750 or above, it is mostly only a positive thing. I worry, however, that when it expands to include all cards valued at $250 or above, including both raw and graded cards, it may become unwieldy. And authenticating a slabbed card that is already authenticated via one of the other grading companies feels unnecessarily redundant. Although I do understand that sometimes that graded card that was bought was not the card that the buyer received, which is likely why they feel the need to also authenticate graded slabs in this whole thing. So I don't know, maybe even that's okay. The other part of the equation to consider here is how this affects the eBay marketplace as far as their competitive advantage-disadvantage as a result of this. When people sell their cards on ComC or PWCC or MySlabs or StarStock or other online marketplaces like this, there is a sort of unofficial authentication process that takes place. In order to get your cards up on a marketplace like that, it requires someone to look at each card, determine what that card is, and categorize it into their marketplace system. In a way, this is a real advantage that those other online marketplaces have over eBay. eBay, despite the fact that they charge higher commission rates than most others, is generally more hands-off than other marketplaces as well, besides things like maybe Facebook groups and Instagram, which aren't so much official marketplaces and are more just flexible social spaces that people can use to buy and sell if they choose to do so. This initiative is basically just allowing eBay to do what all these other online sports card marketplaces already do as part of their structure, make sure the card is actually what it's said to be. On the other hand, there are very likely plenty of buyers and sellers out there who do not want to engage with this extra step of the process. I do personally wish that this was more like an opt-in kind of thing, where a buyer could choose to have their card authenticated. But if that doesn't happen, and it seems like it's not planned, I could see some people choosing to go the direction of Facebook groups or Instagram sales instead of eBay, just to avoid the hassle. That being said, I think the eBay sports card marketplace is so massive that it really won't be affected by what would likely be a relatively small number of people moving to sell their cards on places like Facebook and Instagram. And to be honest, this hassle is still significantly less of a delay than it is to get your cards up on marketplaces like ComC, StarStock, and others, as it takes those places a month or 4 to get the cards listed into the system. That is a much more significant delay than this extra couple of days of the eBay CSG authentication process will take. So all this being said, do I think this is a good thing or a bad thing? And my answer to that question is yes. It's a good thing and a bad thing. But I don't think there is any need to define this as a good thing or a bad thing. It's definitely a thing, but in today's society, people too often want to put things into this box or that box, when in reality, there's just too much nuance to put it into any one single box. Most things are more complicated than that, and this is one of those things. There are some good things about this, there's some bad things about this, but it's happening, that much I know.